Dwight David Eisenhower, the architect of D-Day. In a world set ablaze by the ambition of one man, Adolf Hitler, Europe was slowly sinking into darkness. From Berlin to Paris, from Poland to Greece, entire nations fell to their knees beneath the banner of the swastika. But amid that chaos, there emerged a man with a calm face, not known for cruelty, but for the clarity of his mind and the strength of his heart. Behind that calm demeanor lay one of the most brilliant strategic minds America had ever produced in the 20th century. He wasn't a conqueror, he was a unifier. He was Dwight David Eisenhower, or simply Ike, as his soldiers called him, the architect of D-Day, the liberator of Europe, and one day, the 34th President of the United States. Early life. Dwight David Eisenhower was born on October 14, 1890, in Denison, Texas, to a modest family of German descent. He was the third of 7 sons. His father, David Eisenhower, worked long hours at a creamery, while his mother, Ida Stover Eisenhower, was a devout woman who instilled in her children the values of discipline, hard work, and humility. From her, young Dwight learned that true strength wasn't about muscle or weapons. It was about faith and responsibility. "Do what's right, even when no one is watching," his mother would often say, a lesson he carried for the rest of his life. The Eisenhowers were not a military family, nor people of influence, but they were bound by faith and duty. Life in Abilene, Kansas was tough, but it taught young Dwight self-reliance, honesty, and perseverance. As a boy, he was quiet yet firm, fond of reading military history and deeply passionate about sports, especially football. On the field, he learned teamwork, strategy, and leadership, skills that would later define his destiny. The making of a soldier. Although Eisenhower once dreamed of becoming a doctor, he knew his family couldn't afford medical school. Fate, however, had a different plan. In 1911, he was admitted to the United States Military Academy at West Point. 4 years later, he graduated as a second lieutenant, a member of the class known as the class the stars fell on, because so many of its members would one day become generals during World War II. At West Point, Ike wasn't the top student academically, but he was respected for his discipline, resilience, and leadership among his peers. He learned lessons about responsibility, endurance, and character that would guide him through every challenge that followed. The early Army years. After graduation, Eisenhower joined the U.S. Army just as the world was plunged into World War I. Thousands of young officers were sent to fight in the trenches of France. Eisenhower wanted to go, desperately, but instead, he was assigned to train tank units back home, experimenting with what was then a brand new form of warfare. Though disappointed, the experience became a turning point. It taught him logistics, organization, and large-scale coordination, skills that would later make him indispensable. He once said, "Success on the battlefield doesn't come from luck. It comes from discipline, planning, and perfect cooperation." Between the wars, when the war ended, the world changed, but not in America's favor. The 1920s and 1930s brought the Great Depression, the worst economic crisis in U.S. history. Factories closed, millions lost their jobs, and the military's budget was slashed. For officers like Eisenhower, these were long, quiet years. No battles, no promotions, few chances to prove themselves. But instead of stagnating, Eisenhower kept learning. He studied modern warfare, logistics, and the use of armored vehicles, technologies that would soon reshape the world. In 1935, his life took a new turn. He was appointed military aide to General Douglas MacArthur, one of the most influential and formidable figures in U.S. military history. MacArthur, brilliant yet stubborn, led the modernization of the Philippine Army, and Eisenhower was right beside him. During those years in Asia, Ike learned not just tactics, but diplomacy, global politics, and the delicate balance between power and principle. World War II. In 1939, war erupted again. Hitler invaded Poland, and Europe once more descended into chaos. America, still weary from the last war, tried to stay neutral until December 7, 1941. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Thousands were killed. The world would never be the same. Eisenhower was called to Washington. His task: help design the Allied strategy to defeat Nazi Germany. Almost overnight, his talent for planning and coordination shone. He managed alliances, balanced egos, and built trust between nations. The once unknown officer became a rising star, the strategist who could see the entire chessboard. The architect of D-Day. By 1943, Eisenhower was appointed Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force. His job: unite armies from different nations, languages, and cultures into one unstoppable force. He had to mediate between strong personalities: Britain's perfectionist General Montgomery, America's fiery General George S. Patton, and France's proud Charles de Gaulle. But Eisenhower never ruled by anger. He led with patience, diplomacy, and quiet authority. His gift for unity became his greatest weapon. All of that would be tested on June 6, 1944, D-Day. For months, he had overseen Operation Overlord, the largest amphibious invasion in human history. Thousands of ships, planes, and more than 2 million soldiers were ready to storm the beaches of Normandy. The night before the invasion, violent storms battered the English Channel. Many commanders urged a delay. Eisenhower studied the weather reports, took a deep breath, and said 2 simple words: "Greater than we go." It was the decision that changed the world. On the morning of June 6, 1944, the Allies landed in Normandy. The battle was brutal, but they prevailed. Europe's liberation had begun. To his soldiers, Ike was more than a general. He was a symbol of calm in the storm, a leader who didn't just command, but cared. From war to peace. When the war ended, Europe lay in ruins. Cities burned, millions were homeless, and hope was fragile. Eisenhower, now the most respected man in the free world, became the guardian of peace. As military governor of occupied Germany, he ensured the transition from war to reconstruction. He oversaw the Nuremberg trials, rebuilt civil institutions, and made sure that American soldiers were seen not as conquerors, but as protectors of humanity. Yet even in victory, Ike asked himself, is winning a war enough if the world is destined to fight another? That question led him toward a new mission: politics. The path to the presidency. After returning home, Eisenhower continued to serve, this time in diplomacy. In 1951, as Cold War tensions rose, he became the first Supreme Commander of NATO. Not because he sought power, but because the world trusted his steady hand. He traveled across Europe, Paris, London, Brussels, urging cooperation among former enemies. He reminded them again and again, we are not preparing for war. We are working to ensure that war never happens again. Europe admired him. America adored him. And soon, the call grew louder. Greater than we want Ike. In 1952, after much persuasion, he accepted the Republican nomination for president. I'm not seeking power, he said, but if my country calls, I will serve. He won by a landslide, becoming the 34th President of the United States. The Eisenhower era. As president, Eisenhower led with calm and reason. The world stood on the edge of nuclear conflict, but he refused to act out of fear. He believed peace must be defended with strength, and that strength must never destroy peace itself. Under his leadership, America built the interstate highway system, expanded education for veterans, and kept the Cold War from turning hot. He balanced force with diplomacy and ambition with restraint. At home, he faced another kind of war, the struggle for civil rights. In 1957, when the governor of Arkansas defied federal law by blocking black students from entering a public school, Eisenhower made a difficult decision. He sent federal troops to enforce integration. For him, justice and the rule of law came before politics. Legacy. As his presidency drew to a close, Eisenhower delivered one of the most powerful farewell speeches in American history. He warned the nation, "Beware the unwarranted influence of the military-industrial complex. The weapons we build to protect freedom must never become a threat to that very freedom." After leaving office, he retired quietly to his farm in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. He wrote, met visitors from around the world, and advised younger leaders, including President John F. Kennedy. On March 28, 1969, Dwight David Eisenhower passed away at the age of 78. America mourned deeply, not just the death of a general, but the loss of a symbol of wisdom, steadiness, and integrity. He was remembered not as a man of war, but as a man who understood the power of peace. Eisenhower taught the world that real strength lies not in domination, but in unity. He didn't lead to conquer the world, he led to bring it together.